Good day to all. This is our second part for our discussions involving exchange rates, open economy, and all about the real exchange rates and the related items. So we have here the demand for dollars. What could be the reason that there is a demand for dollars, especially if the dollars would be national currency? The reason that dollars or Canadian dollars is our national currency, since that is our situation here. So our source is from Canada. What could be the reason? So to us, or for us to be able to buy Canadian goods and also with the real and financial assets. So the buyers would be interested to buy Canadian dollars to do these following. And as explained in the previous video, the demand curve is downward sloping. So this means that if the nominal exchange rate for the Canadian dollars would actually increase, so in that case, there would be lesser units of Canadian dollars that can be bought with the same disposable or net disposable income. All other things being constant or ceteris paribus. On another hand, if we say supply of dollars, again, Canadian dollars, what's the reason to be able to buy foreign goods? This is in relation to the real exchange rate. And then also to buy real and financial assets in foreign countries. So with the real exchange rate, there is the production or the sellers would be interested to provide their dollars so that they can look for prospective buyers, since they will be using such to buy foreign goods and the real estate and financial assets in foreign countries. And because if the nominal rates would increase, then there would be more availability of dollars. That's why it is upward sloping. So as nominal rates would increase, then the availability of dollars would also increase. Then this is interesting. What would be the effects of changes in output income? When domestic output income rises, meaning to say the available in the country for the output or income, so let's say the net disposable income rises, there would be demand for imports. So since more income is available, then all other things being constant, more people would be buying goods from abroad. So the demand would increase. And then because the demand would increase, then the net exports must fall. Why again? The formula for net exports is exports minus imports. Since there are more imports, so net exports would be lesser. But what would be the impact of that? Remember, if there are more imports, so more units will be coming in the country, our domestic currency would be depreciating. So supply analysis again, if ever there are plenty of available items or supplies in the economy, so that would make that particular currency, especially the Canadian dollars, to fall in its value. And because of that, its value also will fall, the nominal exchange rate of that particular currency. Then on another hand, to continue with the analysis, what about if foreign output or income would rise? So those income or output in other countries would rise. In that case, we as producers would be producing more goods in order to cater the needs of people and economies other than our country or the foreign countries. Therefore, exports would be rising, and therefore net exports would also be rising. Formula again, exports minus imports. And then what would happen? Since our units of currencies are being utilized or used for abroad, then this means that in our economy, there are lesser available units. And there are lesser available units would mean that lesser units again available in the economy would mean that our supply is lower than our demand. So in that case, the value of our currencies would also increase, as well as its nominal exchange rate. So its ability to buy foreign currencies would exchange and rise. Then what is the effect, or what are the effects of changes in real interest rate? If we have discussed about the exchange rate, and now also we talk about the interest rate. If the real interest rate in a certain country, the domestic country or local country, would rise, ceteris paribus, other factors held constant, then there would be more investors who will be interested to invest in our country's real and financial assets, since they become more attractive for investment. And in that case, the demand for domestic currency, since more people will be interested with our investments, so the utilization of the domestic currency would be higher. And therefore, the value of that exchange rate of that particular domestic currency or local currency would also appreciate or rise. So this is another concept, as opposed with the effects of changes in our real exchange rate. This time, this is all about interest rate, which is, I would say, easier as compared with the exchange rate. Then after that, if the domestic or local real interest rate rises, so as what we've said a while ago, that would make the exchange rate appreciate. But then because the exchange rate have increases or has increased, then this would mean that there are more imports coming into our country, therefore reducing the net exports. And then if the foreign country's real interest rate rises, then we would be supplying more goods there and lesser available in our country, so lesser supply. And then in that case, for the domestic currency though, but that would be latter, because for us to be able to sustain the real interest rate to produce, in order for such to be sustained again or to be answered or responded for, then we tend to supply more of our domestic currency available. So there would be more supplies of domestic currencies in our countries. And because there's more supply initially, then the exchange rate would depreciate or depreciates. That is again supply versus demand, and the domestic country net exports would rise. The reason for that is there would be lesser imports in that particular case, or more exports then. Now, to continue, if ever we think of the savers, especially in an open economy where there would be worldwide and international exchanges of goods and services, and of course, international and global level of investments in financial markets. So savers have more opportunities to buy financial assets because they have money saved or assets saved, sold by foreign borrowers as well as those sold by domestic. So if these people are savers, whether the financial assets are from local sources or foreign sources, of course, they can do so. Then investment decisions would depend on the nominal interest rates, especially if they are going to be higher or lower, and the changes to the exchange rate with respect to the currencies. If again, they would also be higher or lower. As to the impact, they were already, or they're already explained. But normally, if there would be higher interest rates as investors, then we would be interested to invest more. And then for the exchange rates, of course, if there would be higher in terms of the value, if we are into that currency, so we would be investing more. That's the normal thing or situation as wise or sane investors or prospective investors. Then this is the formula. Anyway, this is formulaic in nature, but this would be the nominal rate of return on a foreign bond. So we just have to look into that. And then a while ago, so to continue, we now mention about interest rate parity. If we have the PPP, purchasing power parity there under exchange rates, for the interest rates, we have the IRP, interest rate parity, that the differences in the returns for the interest rates cannot persist for long. They would tend to equalize or normalize. And this is our equilibrium for the international asset market, or the nominal interest rate parity condition. So all we have to do is to look into that and substitute the amounts or values. Then in IRP, that is going to be the condition or situation and assumption if the nominal exchange rate, which is I, is expected to remain the same as its current value in the foreign currency, which is I sub 4. So nominal exchange rate remain the same as its current value. Then the real interest rate parity condition is also this, and what follows. So example here would be, in this particular illustration, we can see the x-axis with the desired saving less desired investment denoted by S, obviously saving, and then that's with superscript, or let's say the power of D, minus the investment with a D, superscript. So that's with respect to our desired values. So D stands for the desired savings, desired investment. And then NX stands for net exports. These are on our x-axis. On the y-axis, we have the domestic real interest rate denoted by R. Now, if you look into the desired saving less desired investment, or S minus I, or with the D, S superscript D minus I superscript D, this curve slopes upward because we can see that explanation here. A higher domestic real interest rate increases the excess of desired saving over desired investment. So when there is more interest, then our desire to save would be greater than our desire to invest. So save the money because it would earn more interest, then place that, for example, in other vehicles. So it doesn't mean though that we would not invest, but it's just that the desired saving would be higher. On another hand, the NX or net exports curve in relation to the domestic real interest rate would go downward, because if we have higher domestic real interest rate, then there would be higher also real exchange rate. So there is a direct relationship with our real interest rate and our real exchange rate, just like also the nominal is our real exchange rate. So in this case, for this one, and we can see such here that our E, the real exchange rate, is really directly proportional to our nominal exchange rate, or vice versa. That's one thing that we should remember supposedly as we go along the way with our discussion. And going back, so there is again a direct relationship with our domestic real interest rate with the real exchange rate. So as the domestic real interest rate would go higher, our capabilities of using one unit currency to buy goods or to exchange our local good, one local good with foreign goods, then that would also rise. So meaning to say we can buy more goods if we have higher interest. So probably because we are able to have more available monies in our end, since there are more people placing their monies. So this would, in return though, reduce the net exports because people have more money, so they are able to have more imports. And the formula, net exports, is exports minus imports. So more imports, meaning more items in the subtrahend. So the difference would also be lower. And then goods market equilibrium occurs at point E. And in this particular point, this is the intersection point of the two curves. And we are able to see the level for the desired saving, less desired investment. Here, if you are going to extend that at the x-axis, unfortunately, we don't have the value, so it wouldn't be relevant, but the best would be on the R sub 1, which is our real interest rate in which the two curves are equal. So this clears the goods market. Moving on, in fixing the exchange rate, we have to take note that the exchange rate could be overvalued or undervalued. And then we just have to take note that in a fixed exchange rate system, we're done with the volatile or the flexible exchange rate system. The value of the nominal exchange rate is officially set. So that's why there would only be some fixes or adjustments if ever there would be some overvaluation or undervaluation. So in this case, for an overvaluation and overvalued exchange rate, this can happen, or this is a situation when an exchange rate E sub nom is higher than its fundamental value or actual value, E superscript 1 nom. So this is a situation where we can see the amount of currency vis-a-vis with the nominal exchange rate, which is E sub nom. And then we can notice here that E bar nom is our officially fixed nominal exchange rate. And then E to the power of 1 or superscript 1 nom is the fundamental value. Now, the official rate is fixed above, but E sub 1 nom, that's our fundamental value. In that case, we can see that the value of the currency is overvalued. And that's why in order for this problem to be solved, so there would be the uses of reserves. Remember, in the discussion of monetary policy, for example, the central bank, or in the Philippines, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, will have reserves. So for every value of this particular currency, or let's say bill or coin, there would be a certain percentage of reserves in order to serve as backup. Now, the reserves can be utilized in order to maintain this level for the fixed currency system or exchange rate system. The reason is for us to have more currencies available in our economy, thereby lowering down the value to fundamental value. Remember, law of supply and demand. So if we buy back our foreign, let's say, currencies, basically, let's say the local currencies are there abroad available, so we just have to buy them back. So purchase them back, which are available in the foreign currencies exchange market. And then just buy them back in order to have more supply in our economy or market, and in order again to decrease the value. So this loss of reserves also is referred to as the country's balance of payments deficit. I think I mentioned a while ago about the foreign currencies, of course, because the currencies that we have, domestically speaking, are now on the foreign currencies exchange market. So we need to buy them back. To summarize, in a situation or case of an overvalued exchange rate, the government can do what we mentioned a while ago to buy back its currency in foreign exchange market, or we can also do above, so devalue the nominal fixed exchange rate, so decrease the value, or we restrict international transactions so that whatever domestic currencies that we have or local currencies that we've had or available, then they can remain or stay. So only release the portion remaining for us to be able to maintain the value, the fundamental value of our currency. Then to support the domestic currency, the central bank must use the reserves that correspond to the country's balance of payment deficit. The payment deficit that we're talking about, or the balance of payment deficit, is on the loss of the reserves in which we use to buy back our respective domestic or local currencies from the exchange market in abroad, and for us to be able to have more supply. However, because reserves are limited, so our Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or in other countries, the central bank that they've had, cannot do that forever. All right, so this will be the end of our second session for our series, and watch out for the third part or third portion of our series or installment of our series. Hopefully you got something from this session or this part. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.